What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Country, and welcome to the Ginger Chronicles. Unfortunately, there's no death guest here tonight, but I will have a great guest joining me in a little bit as we talk about, as you can see, WWF, WCW, the late 90s Monday Night War that forever changed the landscape of wrestling. Never before had two major companies win at it head-to-head for ratings, and what created one of the best eras in wrestling, in my opinion. Something today's product definitely lacks. I want to thank everybody for joining me here tonight. Hopefully we can make this show great for you. And right now, let me bring up my guest tonight. He is the host of Reels and Heels, which you can find right here on the HWWS Web TV network. Mr. Brian, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing good. And actually, my co-host is on her way, so she'll be joining us in a minute. But yeah, man, thank you. I love this. The Monday Night Wars. I mean, you said, especially in our country, it was the first time there was a war. Like in Mexico, all the feds were always, competing against each other.
And in Japan also.
Japan
too, yeah. Actually, the main thing for WCW, which is why they were able to, because for the longest time between WWF and WCW, especially during the JCP days, the Jim Crockett promotions, and then when Turner bought, their problem was always they just could not compete. They were in a very distant second. Anybody that paid attention knew WWF was the leader. And then a guy named Eric Bischoff takes over. He's really familiar with the Japan product going on with New Japan and All Japan and the different companies in Japan. And he traveled over there a lot. And one thing which is where he came up with the idea for the NWO, is because I believe is either All Japan or New Japan, one of them did the exact same thing where they had an invading company. And luckily for Bischoff, he was able to acquire the services of one Scott Hall, a.k.a. Razor Ramon in WWF, and Kevin Nash, a.k.a. Diesel, at a time when things were definitely changing. The fans, I believe, back in 94 and 95, definitely was one of their biggest downtimes, especially for the WWF. The Hogan era was over. It was the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels era. For some reason, here in the States, was not a big seller. And internationally, though, they were still huge, but here they weren't. So that kind of twist and the way Bischoff did it by bringing Hall and Nash in, that was something we had never really seen here in the United States.
Yeah. And then he also was looking at how wrestling used to be, how territories would work together here in the States. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to remember, was it AAA that they were working with in Mexico, or was it one of the other?
I believe it's AAA. AAA is usually the main one that works with a lot of companies here in the States. I could be wrong,
because I think that's how they got Mysterio.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like we were talking before the show came on about one of the key things WCW did was they introduced the cruiserweight division, which Rey Mysterio definitely. Him, Dean Malenko, and Eddie Guerrero, those guys, Chris Jericho, all those guys, they put that division on the map. There's a lot of young guys now that are actually about their size that they consider their heavyweight division. If you look, because before then it was all about who had the biggest muscles, who was the biggest guy. And then they came along and changed it up at the right time when WCW was really taking off because of stuff Eric Bischoff was doing.
It was so funny. Every time I saw La Parka come out, who's not a cruiserweight, but they would always put him in the cruiserweight matches.
I loved it when he became the chairman, just came out strumming the chair.
There was a lot of people that was La Parka, right? There was 3 or 4 different La Parkas.
Well, I know there's an original La Parka that recently died within the last couple of years that was not at all involved with that character that we saw. I'm not sure how many different La Parkas they may have had. La Parka wasn't really my favorite, so I never really kept much information on La Parka. So I wouldn't really know what to tell you on that one.
But yeah, he wasn't my favorite, but he was. There was always entertainment quality to those matches,
Oh
especially
yeah.
when it was like La Parca and Juventud Guerrera.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, because I mean, back then it was something we'd never seen before. We didn't see that kind of high flying action. We didn't see. I mean, I guess like Shawn Michaels was starting to do that in the WWF, but the
But
cruiserweights,
he
especially,
was still, well, the tag team division in WWF. I think that's like the Rockers. They were doing a lot of cruiserweight type stuff.
yeah, him and Marty were doing it back in the '80s, and I guess any other one, I would say maybe Dynamite because he would always do, especially off the top turnbuckle. But I mean, I guess, but I mean, we never really saw anything really like what the Mexican wrestlers are bringing over from AAA or the Japan wrestlers were bringing over. I mean, that cruiserweight style. I mean, Ultimo Dragon was one of my favorites. I mean,
Yeah, I
him.
remember when he came out with all the belts from
Oh
like
yeah.
all over the world.
Who was
And
it I saw one time? They had to pull their
who was
belts
his
in.
manager? What was his name? Do you remember?
Oh, it was Sonny Ono.
Sonny Ono, yeah, because he also had Masahiro Chono.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, Sonny Ono was actually behind the scenes because I listened to Eric Bischoff's podcast, and him and Sonny Ono are really good friends, which is why WCW was able to work with New Japan and get those stars and send them back and forth because that relationship right there. I think Vince. I don't remember if Vince actually tried to work with New. I know back then he was working with the NWA a little bit, through Jim Cornette.
I think
And
they worked with Japan, but that was like in the 80s, maybe.
okay, yeah, he would
I
have
don't
done the
know I don't
90s.
know if it was New Japan or All Japan Pro. I think it was New Japan, but that was like um, when they would go over to Japan, they would do stuff. It wasn't like where Japan would come to the U.S. So whenever
Right.
Vince went over to Japan, they would work with. I'm thinking, yeah, it was New Japan.
Yeah, because Vince wasn't really introducing that cruiserweight style, that lucha style or Japan style during that time. I mean, he was still trying to strum along until the NWO came and WCW just took off like a rocket and started whipping his ass. And then he had to
He still
adapt.
had a lot of those characters too.
Yeah.
WCW had a lot of like generic people, but I mean they had a few like characters, I guess you would say.
Oh yeah,
But
I'm a
WWF at
glacier.
that time, yeah, I mean WWF at that time, I mean they still had like they had like Duke the Dumpster Drosy. They had
Yeah.
who was the hockey guy? The Goon.
Oh, the Goon.
Skinner. I
Remember
mean they
when
had
they
like.
called Bob Holly Sparky Plug Thurman, Sparky Plug Holly?
Oh yeah, I remember his promos. Like he was like on the NASCAR track. He's like, yeah, I conquered the NASCAR world. Now I'm gonna conquer the wrestling ring. It's kind of like how Jeff Jarrett said, he was trying to break into Nashville, and yeah,
Right. Oh yeah, when he was Double J.
yeah.
Yeah, I actually remember growing up watching a lot of Jeff Jarrett because I'm from Tennessee, and Jarrett, of course, his dad lived in Hendersonville, ran Mid South. I think no, didn't run Mid South, but like what was that? The USWAA, I think, or something like that.
His family, they created the NWA back in like I want to say like the early 1900s.
Jarrett's family actually created the NWA.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
It's his dad, Jerry Jarrett, actually was right under Vince as far within that company for a little while when he actually was up there. And other than that, I mean, they opened TNA and so I mean, I knew a lot about the Jarretts. I didn't know they created NWA or helped create it, but like Jeff, I remember seeing Jeff a long time ago. I remember seeing Jerry Lawler when I was a kid wrestle before he just got, the commentating table. So I'm familiar with all that. But getting back to the war a little bit, man, what was because I think what really kicked it off was Luger jumping on the first Monday Nitro. It wasn't a big loss for WWE or WWF, and it definitely wasn't a huge gain for WCW. I think it was more for shock value because that started something. I mean, you talked about the crazy characters they had. And the one that really comes to mind was the Yeti back at Halloween I mean, it looked like just a hump fest on Hogan in the middle of the ring. This guy dressed up like a mummy, and they called him the Yeti. I mean, WCW had their characters too, which was
I mean,
hilarious.
RoboCop showed up.
Yeah, RoboCop was Sting. And then what was his? Damn it, he went by tugboat in the WWF. But what was that character called where he just crashed right through the wall?
Oh, the
Um, the
Shockmaster.
Shockmaster. Yeah, that was hilarious. I mean, you don't come back from shit like that. And
Yeah.
then they finally went real. And one of the things Bischoff has talked about is that, you know, it was his idea to kind of more go towards that realness, get that 18 to 34 demographic where the WWF had always pandered to kids. They were still trying to do that. WCW went a different
I
route.
think the war. I mean, the war was kind of starting there. I think the war really started when Nash and Hall showed up, and then Eric Bischoff sold. He's like, "What are these guys doing here? They don't even work here."
Yeah, when
And they were
it got
making
all
you
the way up
think.
here.
Yeah, they were making you think it was Diesel and Razor Ramon because they were talking in character, and they did the mannerisms and everything. And then, of course, when Alondra Blaze came over as Medusa and she took the women's title and threw it in the trash.
Yeah, that was definitely a huge blow, which is why later on the Montreal screw job happened when they just took the belt from Brett by any means because they were afraid he would do the exact same thing like Alondra did or Medusa and just drop it in the trash can on live TV, which I've heard Bischoff say since then that legally he could not do that because after not legally, it was just they were still dealing with lawsuits from the WWF when Medusa did it. So he said there was no way in hell that I would have let Brett do it on TV after all the legal shit they were having to go through because, with Vince, because Vince would sick the lawyers on them all the time. I mean, he had a history of doing that. He would back when I think that's how the Warrior Rumble came about. They put on live free TV to try to counteract shit that the NWA WCW was doing back in the 80s. So I mean, he was always doing that.
Yeah. Speaking of the Royal Rumble, probably the greatest match that Pat Pazin's created.
Oh yeah, I mean that's definitely going to be one of the highest points of his legacy. That and winning that tournament in Rio for the Intercontinental title.
Yeah, being the first Intercontinental champion. And the legacy moved on from there. But yeah, you know, seeing Hall and Nash show up and like Tony Schiavone and Eric Bischoff selling it, like, who are these? Like, what are they doing here? They don't work here, and that really like even the audience was like going crazy.
Oh yeah, because I mean they had just seen because back then, you know, the internet wasn't around, so I had no idea that they had a huge hug fest in Madison Square Garden that everybody knew they were leaving. I didn't know that Razor and Diesel were leaving, and out of nowhere they just showed up on Nitro. Razor first, and I'm like, oh shit. And I think it was either the week later or 2 weeks later, Nash showed up, and then
he kept referring to him as the big guy. He's like, yeah, the big guy will be here next week.
And then something that hadn't happened before either was when, like, because, you know, Bischoff and Vince, which is why I think this competition works so well. They also did pretty much the same thing on TV beforehand. They were both commentators. Neither one would own up that they were running each company. And before Austin gave Vince the stunner, Bischoff took a jackknife from Nash at the Great American Bash, which, I mean, it sent shockwaves because we weren't used to seeing that. And then, of course,
I remember that. That was right because WCW always had their like their booth was set up at the entrance ramp, right? They didn't.
Yeah, I think that one. Yeah, definitely Nitro. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think the pay-per-views they had it set up that way too. I don't remember them being at ringside on WCW. I might have to go back and look, but I think they had their stuff set up. And yeah, he was power bombed off of the because their entrance thing was like raised.
It was off the stage. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he had he'd brought both of them out to interview him, right there on the stage. And I think that I'm not sure if that's when they announced the match for Bash at the Beach, but I remember that was when Nash first, jackknifed him. And then, of course, then they announced the 6-man, the 3-on-3. They're because they kept started referencing a third person, someone else coming with them. Yeah. And man, I'll never forget that event. Watching Hogan turn heel, that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean that not only changed the world of wrestling, that shocked the world, like, just in general.
Oh yeah,
And I
all that
remember,
trash.
yeah, and I remember we found out later on that Gene Okerlund didn't know, like, because they wanted his interview after the match to be legit.
Yep.
So
none of the announcers knew either.
Yeah, it was a very small, like, of course, Savage knew, of course, but
I don't think he. I'm trying to. I know. Well, they still weren't sure. Even Bischoff talks about they still even leading up to the event, like to that moment. Well, up to the event itself, their backup plan was always to turn Sting mid-match and have him join Nash and Hall because they still wasn't sure if Hogan would actually do it. And then it's funny because when he came out, the crowd's cheering. They're thinking, here comes, the good guy Hulk. And you hear Bobby the Brain say, yeah, but whose side is he on? And even the Bobby didn't know who, he had no idea who Hogan was turning. But that moment, man, when he came in, leg drop match, dude, I was sitting there. I was in shock because I was never a Hogan fan. I was always anti-Hogan. But damn, I liked the heel Hogan, Hollywood Hogan. I loved.
Yeah. Well, let me ask. I know you say you're not a fan of Hogan, but do you appreciate that the eyes on professional wrestling he did, especially like in the '80s?
Oh yeah, especially with the movies.
He made wrestling pulp culture. Like before that, it was just a circus thing. But then, he did the whole, like, say your prayers, take your vitamins, and he started going on all the talk shows and radio shows, and it was more of a less circus and more like the world had eyes on the sport of professional wrestling. And I'm going to call it a sport because if you're doing anything athletic, it's a sport.
Oh yeah, I mean he's not the GOAT by any means, in my opinion.
No, not the GOAT. No, but he's what put wrestling on the map worldwide.
I would still call him the Michael Jordan of wrestling because when you think of basketball, immediately you think of Michael Jordan. When you think of wrestling, the first one to pop to your head is Hulk Hogan. Even though the GOAT, in my opinion, is Ric Flair, you still think of Hulk Hogan because how he transcended the sport. I mean, he, The Rock, has done a lot now and moved on definitely more into those movie scenes, but Hogan had his own cartoon. He had movies, and movies weren't all that great. The cartoon I liked, and definitely so opened the door for merchandise sales because before Hogan, I mean, most wrestlers didn't have any idea what it was like to make merchandise sales, and then Hogan just streamlined that.
You're good. You can go. Nicole just got here. She'll be here joining us in a minute.
Nice.
Yeah, so, she's a huge wrestling fan. I'll give you a little input. Her favorite wrestler of all time is Edge.
Okay.
So this is a great topic for her because this is when Edge came in. So.
Yeah. It was what year did Edge come in? Was it 99?
No, I think it was before 99, I thought.
Because I know the war was well underway. But I want to think he came in as they were starting to turn the tide on WCW.
Oh, I was gonna get my phone and look it up, but I'll look it up here. Why? Yeah, when did he? Let's see. 97 is when he came in.
97? Oh, I was off by 2 years. So yeah, he came in right in the thick of it then.
So, yeah, 90, 97, because 98 is when it really took off for the Attitude Era.
Yeah, the Attitude Era, Austin era is really what kicked that off. You know, Austin, and then of course The Rock after he did his little babyface routine, and yeah, then Edge, and yeah, then Christian came in. Yeah, so that's when the Attitude Era really kicked off. Attitude Era is also when that's what helped them just win the war, because WCW, they got all the way up there with the NWO, but they just couldn't get beyond it,
Yeah,
and they should have started promoting. They had the best thing on the TV, which was the cruiserweight division.
yeah,
And then once they lost them guys to WWF, that was a wrap.
yeah. You know who was really laughing it all the way to the bank, and it was neither. I mean, it was both companies, but it was TNT and USA.
Oh yeah, I mean, because they were eating it up. I mean, I remember because I remember growing up as a little kid watching the Hulk Hogan era, watching the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, start the start of that era. It was still passe to admit you're a wrestling fan. I mean, I remember it wasn't the main thing, and then once the NWO hit, man, and then Austin hit, the whole late '90s, everybody in my schools got on either an NWO shirt or an Austin shirt. I mean, the wrestling business was just making buttloads of money in that era.
Oh yeah. I mean, I kind of, not super NWO fan. I mean, I appreciated what they did, but I was more of a DX guy because I
Oh
liked the
yeah.
shenanigans that they did. I thought their skits were more funny. Um, I mean, and I talked about this when we did our attitude thing. The whole Nation of Domination skit, that was like hilarious.
The corporate skits they would do, because yeah, I mean, Nash and them tried that over in WCW when they did a skit on the Horseman, and it was and then but DX definitely had them beat in that department.
Yeah, and I think what set them apart was WCW had too much backstage politics. I mean,
Oh
Hogan
yeah,
had,
too
and
much creative control.
yeah, never. I think it was you that told me never have your champion be the head booker.
Never, no. Mm-mm. I
Yeah,
mean, look what happened when Nash got. I mean, they had one of the best things right there. They had a golden goose, is what Bobby Heenan called it, and Bill Goldberg. They had built this guy up, the super huge baby face that just running through people. Nash gets the book, gets the pencil, and all of a sudden he's the guy to beat Goldberg. Where Scott Hall hits him with a damn cattle prod of all
yeah,
things, it would kill anybody. Let's be real about that. And Goldberg loses. Nash gets the belt, and then of course the finger poke of doom. Never book yourself as champion because mainly never have someone with a huge ego as your booker,
right.
and don't let them book themselves as champion because it never works out.
Yeah, I mean, and especially when at this time, later on we find out that Hall was, all the problems he had. So never, you don't want to have Hall have creative, when who knows what he's strung up on, coke or whatever else that he was doing at that time.
I know the main thing was alcohol, which was one of his biggest vices, and I'm glad
Yeah,
last few years, thanks to help from DDP and stuff, he's been able to shake that because
yeah, DDP, man, he's helped so many people. I mean,
him, Jake the
I
Snake.
think, yeah, Jake the Snake, I think was the one that really started it all.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah, I do. If you ever get a chance, though, man, I don't know if you ever checked out cameos. Check out a couple of DDP's cameos because you'll notice he promotes that DDP yoga huge or bigly, and I mean it's funny listening to his cameos because he'll go same damn pitch every single time, and that's another great I guess superstar or WCW superstar from back during the war. I mean, talk about someone who didn't start wrestling until he was in his late 30s, I think 35 or 36,
Yeah,
and became world champion. I mean, before that, he was running a strip club down in Florida. His only really wrestling appearance was driving his pink caddy out for WrestleMania with the Honky Tonk Man.
yeah, yeah. I remember. Yeah, and he was running a club, but he was a bouncer as well, right? He did kind of both.
Yeah, I don't know if he was the bouncer. He might have been the bouncer. But I
Yeah,
know he definitely ran it.
yeah. Because I know the Godfather, uh, Charles Wright, I believe is his name. He was
Mhm.
the head of security of Cheetahs in Las Vegas.
He still is though, right now, isn't he?
I believe he still is connected to Cheetahs, which is I mean, I lived in Vegas for 15 years, so like randomly sometimes I would run into him just because when you live in Vegas, you know. But
Right.
yeah, he was a cool dude. But yeah, DDP was someone that WCW kind of slept on, and like he organically gained a following.
I mean, he took. I mean, you got to think. Look at the get up, the gimmick. They had him. Well, they actually let him dress. I don't know if he did it himself or they did it to him. I mean, before he really, back when he first came out, back when he had Scott Hall's the Diamond Stud, he was so like, I guess, out there with it that nobody could take him serious. And then he decided he was going to make it work one way or another. Got rid of most of the get up, and then came out and then started diamond cutting everybody. I mean, and taking over. And he was like pretty much running wild as the head of WCW during their little battles with the NWO.
Yeah, and he had one of the coolest like themes. That was something WCW had. They had a lot of cool entrance themes.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean the NWO was probably all like my favorite. The Wolfpack theme I thought was really good. I like the Wolfpack theme.
Yeah, that actually was pretty catchy. Like I could have totally heard that song on like a hip hop station.
Hennessy said he thought the NWO was real. I think that's
Dude, a
why.
lot of people did.
Yeah, that's why it worked so well. Everybody thought it was a real shoot. Everybody thought Hall and Nash were really taking over until they had to come on TV and pretty much say they did not work for the WWF. But yeah, up until then, I mean, which that's why it worked so well. And then, of course, with the Hogan turn, that just sealed it. I mean, there wasn't no going back. The problem with the NWO, I think, always was that they kept growing way too much. I think they should have just kept it at the core and they could have ran with it for a long time. When you grow something like that, keep adding members to where 80% of your roster is under one stable. I mean, it just doesn't leave any options. Doesn't leave any options for any good stories or any good, matchups.
Yeah, and it was always like a lot of the generic people that were joining too. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
just like people that even part of the NWO, they were never going to be over.
No, I mean,
I mean,
not when you've got Hogan, Nash, and Hall, and then and then you got the boss also with those top guys booking himself against Ric Flair. And
one of the my favorites of the mid carders was Buff Bagwell.
really,
I always thought Alexander Bagwell was. I mean, I thought he was good prior to joining NWO, but that character of Buff Bagwell, I enjoyed that character.
he was always all right to me. I think I liked him better when he was tag team back in the day with Tuco Scorpio. That I thought they did a good job. When he became Buff Bagwell, I mean he definitely played a good heel. He played a great heel. I wasn't really. I mean, I was a fan of the Blockbuster. I liked that because you didn't really see a whole lot of that at that time. I think the Young Bucks had overdone it way too much on that one and other moves. But that's one thing I liked about him. But as after that, I mean, yeah, I wasn't that big of a fan of Buff.
I mean,
Um,
who else was there? Scott Norton. I
Scott
mean,
Norton, Vincent, aka Virgil.
Vincent Virgil. Yeah, who's that at every like Comic Con or wrestling
I
convention?
heard
He's
he is,
always trying,
yeah.
dude. Like he will talk
Mike
to you and
Jones.
like he tries to force his stuff on you. Like he'll start talking to you and be like, "Here, buy this," and you're
Oh
like,
wow.
"Yeah,
Well, it's funny because when he was Virgil in the WWF as Ted DiBiase's butler or whatever he was, he everybody thought that naming him Virgil was a diss on Dusty Rhodes because Rhodes' real name was Virgil. And then, of course, when they with WCW, they named him Vincent. That definitely was a little spit in the face of Vince McMahon. I mean, naming him Vincent, I thought was hilarious, and he was still somewhat Ted DiBiase's little bitch or whatever.
Yeah. And then, of course, there was the whole Rick Rude thing where he was on
Yeah,
both shows in the same night.
yeah, that was classic because that was another time where Eric Bischoff and WCW took advantage of WWF taping their Raws because WCW went live every Monday and
And
Raw
Raw
would
was
tape.
live every other Monday.
Hmm. They would tape a lot. Yeah, be live every other Monday. Caught him slipping. Rude appear on Raw and then later on the night appear on Nitro and just totally just kicked WWF right in the balls. I mean, it backfired on him later on, though, of course, when Tony Schiavone said the infamous line of, "Don't bother switching over to the other channel. We already know what happens. Cactus Jack, aka Mick Foley or Mankind, wins their title tonight." And then that bit him in the ass because everybody switched over. That was the beginning of the turn for the WWF because they said immediately millions of people switched their TV channel over to WWF to watch Mick Foley win the title.
Yeah, it was a lot of it was huge numbers,
Mhm.
numbers that wrestling wish that they would see
Oh
today.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I've started to get back into it. Stayed away most of 2020 until the Thunderdome really came out because watching Mania in that damn performance center last year was so horrible. It took all my patience in the world to get through that card because without the
Like some,
fans
some of
there,
the matches were pretty good.
the
I
well,
always
the
I always
Undertaker
tell Hennessy
AJ.
this that NXT has never let go since they like started. It's like NXT has been up, 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 up since its creation.
You think even after they went to USA? Because I thought for some reason I thought that they were more I think they had more people watching them before they went into that Prime Network spot. Well, not Prime Network, but went on the, you know what I mean, where they were on cable TV every week. I think a lot more people were probably into them back when they were just on the network. But they're still putting up high numbers.
Yeah, I mean, and not just looking at the numbers, quality.
Yeah.
I mean, look at all their takeovers.
Hmm.
Everybody that weekend who's a wrestling fan says, "Wow, Takeover just outdid the last Takeover."
Yep.
I mean, you look at people like Adam Cole and the Undisputed Era and Finn Balor and I mean at the time Velveteen Dream. I mean, they were putting out great matches.
I think he's been injured, hasn't he?
Velveteen,
Yeah.
I think so, but then there was also that social media stuff that could be true or could not be true. I mean, I'm not a TMZ guy, so
Right. Yeah, you never know. I mean, that's I guess that's probably one of the harder things about the ones today is they've got to constantly keep up with their Twitter and everything. They've got to constantly because I mean, I know the WWF mandates them they have to post so many times. You know, that's I don't I post on Twitter maybe once a month. So
can you imagine if that existed during this stage of wrestling, dude? You know how many people would be in trouble probably.
well, that and I don't think it would have been as big as it was with because now if someone leaves the company, you know, like that. Back then, they were able to get a lot of people because you had no idea that Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were going over to WCW. I mean, there were rumors they were leaving, but you had no idea. With the internet back then, it would have gotten out. I mean, there was internet back then, but it wasn't like how it is now. It would have definitely gotten out. It would have been less of a shock. I think it would have impacted it to where it would have business would have went up, but it wouldn't have stayed up as long as it did. Because now it's just harder to keep, people out of the loop. You've got so many smart fans out there who aren't marks anymore. I was a mark back in the day. You got a lot of them now that are smart because they see behind the scenes all the time. So I don't think that something like that wouldn't work today.
Yeah, like today, it was announced that Big Show's on AEW.
Yeah, I saw that. he needs to stay retired. It's like Sting coming over there. I mean, come on. I mean, you're selling merch, but what all can Sting do? He took a power bomb, but he's not going to be wrestling all 3 years. I mean, I understand it from his point. He's wanting to take a payday,
I
but
mean, they have great talent. They're just going to they're already making the same mistakes WCW did.
yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you're like a lot of the guys in charge are talent. I mean, you just can't do it. You got the Bucks in charge of the tag team division. You got Kenny Omega in charge of the women's division. You've got talent running things, and then you've got an inexperienced guy booking wrestling events like Tony Khan. You're going to waste great talent. Let's get back to the Monday Night Wars, man. So one of the key things I remember was especially at King of the Ring 1996, the Austin era truly began because I was always a huge Steve Austin fan. Back in his WCW days as Stunning Steve, also when he was tag team partners with Brian Pillman as the Hollywood Blondes. Didn't really see much of him at ECW because I wasn't really into ECW that much then. I became a huge fan later. I saw his promo, though, that he did on Hogan.
That was great.
Oh, that was awesome. I mean, because Steve's always been a great talker. WCW, I think they missed a golden opportunity. Some of my favorite matches was watching him and Ricky Steamboat battle out for the U.S. title. Was freaking awesome. And then
I want to say, I think Steve Austin, when he was in WCW, he was one of the best TV champions there.
Yeah. I think Arn will probably always be remembered as the most famous TV champion. At least to me, I think he is. Steve, I always remember him with the U.S. title. And, I mean, he could sell. He was great as a heel. And then he goes WWF, and they name him the freaking Ringmaster. And they give him Ted DiBiase. And I'm sitting there thinking the whole time, I'm like, why in the hell is Steve Austin with Ted DiBiase? Why are they not letting him talk?
Yeah, and then they kind of changed his wrestling style, like because in WCW he was actually wrestling, like he was still kind of a brawler, but what was his finisher? The stun gun.
Yeah, when he pretty much draped their neck over the top rope. Wasn't that it? Yeah.
Yeah. And then when he went over to ECW, and Paul knew, because Paul was in WCW at the time that Steve was there. He knew what Steve was capable of doing.
Yeah, he's part of the Dangerous Alliance.
Yeah, he exploited that in the promos. But Steve went over there; he was injured, so that's why he could only do promos. And then he did a few matches, and then of course Vince, signed him as the Ringmaster.
Because it was actually Bret Hart who talked Vince into getting Steve, because Bret always saw him over at WCW, saw the talent and kept getting in Vince's ear, said, hey, you need to sign this guy. You need to get this guy. And they almost ruined it, man, putting him as the Ringmaster with Ted DiBiase. Luckily, when he won the King of the Ring, they let him actually speak, said that infamous line, you can thump your Bibles. You can quote John 16. Well, Austin 3:16 says, I just whooped your ass. And they were off to the races because they finally, with that comment, had someone that was going to take them away from the good old babyface era of, like you said, Hogan earlier, say your prayers, eat your vitamins. But they finally had that anti-hero babyface that could help them compete with WCW.
Yeah. That's probably one of my favorite Steve Austin promos.
Oh, definitely. Has to be.
I mean, that's right. That's probably my top 3 of his. And then, of course, the whole segment with Vince was in the hospital, and he was Dr. Steve.
Had the bedpan.
Yeah.
And then, like you also, of course, bringing in Mike Tyson for his matchup with Shawn for the belt when he finally got the belt put on him. I mean, that was huge. I mean, you had WCW with Rodman and Karl Malone, but I mean, hell, you brought in Mike freaking Tyson, and the build up to that match of him pushing Tyson and then about to get into it. I mean, that right there, I wish they would go back to that type of wrestling, They went more PG. Looks like they're trying to get a little edgier. I wish they with some way, because I think that's how Vince became a billionaire and turned that company into a publicly traded company, was off the back of Austin, The Rock, and the Attitude Era.
Yeah, and wrestling back then too was a bit different. A lot of the matches were called as they were going,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're way too. And this is not just WWF. This is everywhere. They're way too scripted now.
Oh, way too scripted.
Uh, and I
NXT.
think that hurts wrestling in general. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
but then I've heard a lot of the older people like The Rock and even Mick Foley say that it's a different time, so maybe having it called on the spot, or I mean, where some things were worked out, but they were still calling it on the fly, just wouldn't work as well for these newer guys,
Right.
because that's not how they learned when they were being trained.
Yeah, and then you got AEW, which pretty much they allow all their talent to, I guess, call what they want most of the time. And you got to have a good medium because, in my opinion, neither side is really working. NXT was, I think, when they got to that, because when they got to that main event stage of now they're going to be three brands and they're going to be one of the brands, when they got to the USA Network, they started over scripting NXT a little bit more. And I think now Triple H is finally trying to reel that back in a little bit. Because I think Vince probably got his input involved a little bit too much with NXT, because Triple H had it going. I mean, NXT was huge
Yeah,
before he
and
got to the
I
USA.
like Triple H, and eventually him and Stephanie are going to take over the whole company.
Hopefully, there's rumors that a lot of people are thinking that this whole move of the network to Peacock, that Vince may be trying to get. He saw what there's rumors that, like, because he saw what the UFC sold for. There's room that they may be gearing up to sell the company and try to get more for that company than what the UFC got. So who knows? I mean,
Well, I mean, if there's anybody that has money, it is Comcast. I mean, Comcast can buy it, but I still think that uh, Steph and Triple H and most of the people will stay on if it sells, just because it would be too hard for Comcast to just be like, okay, so we have this company, but we don't know how to run it. So
yeah, they
you
can't
keep
do it.
I mean, having someone like Triple H who, see, this is why I would say the difference between Vince and Triple H is Vince comes at it as a promoter
Mm-hmm.
and only a promoter. He's not a wrestler. Triple H comes at it as a wrestler and a promoter because he's seen what Vince does backstage, but he's also been in the ring. I mean, I
Right,
know Vince has been in the ring, but not like Triple H,
right.
and that's why NXT works so well.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the UFC, when they sold, when the Fertitas and Dana White sold the UFC, they still had it in there where Dana White remained president, so they could have someone there who could actually run the company and continue to make it money. So yeah, I wouldn't be shocked now if I see them sell it to Comcast, NBC, or whatever, because of the fact they're moving the network to Peacock. Before that, I would have been totally shocked. But I do think that if that happens, then they're definitely going to keep Triple H on, and probably Stephanie too, as people to run the company. Because I mean, it's one thing to buy the company, but you don't want to buy it and then run it to the ground because you have no idea how to run it.
Right, because that was kind of like with WCW during this time, because it was
Mm-hmm.
Ted Turner who didn't know a damn thing about wrestling. He just
I'm in the
knew that,
wrestling business, Vince.
yeah, he was like, he was looking at wrestling across the world and be like, oh, so there is kind of an audience,
I
I'm
mean,
just going to buy this
Jim
company.
Hurd, the hire of Jim Hurd, former CEO of Pizza Hut, to run your wrestling company is the exact mistake that almost ran that company into the ground early. I mean, luckily they didn't stick around with Hurd for long, but damn, I mean, Hurd gave us the Ding Dongs. Remember that tag team, the Ding Dongs? Oh my God, they came out had bells attached to them, and it was just terrible, horrible.
I love how that Vince would spoof WCW with those shorts, and it would be the Nacho Man
And the Hulkster,
and
the
and
Huckster.
Billionaire Ted.
They I heard stories later because that's all I do now most of the time, man. I'll hop on YouTube and watch like shoot interviews from all the wrestlers from back then, telling all the stories. And a lot of Hogan, a lot of them talking about they would actually sit there and watch those skits on TV and just laugh their ass off. They had a good time at it.
Yeah, I remember, growing up at this time, what was it? The big for WWF was Coliseum, but for wrestling in general, it was RF Video, right? I believe they would do all the shoot interviews of wrestlers and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, but Coliseum would release like the pay-per-views of
Right.
WWF at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a company called RF Video where they would do the shoot interviews, and so they were like, not affiliated with any company. It was just interviewing the actual wrestlers, and this was like the kind of the first time that you saw a lot of or heard a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, because there was still kayfabe. They were still
Right.
trying to not have the curtain be revealed, but
Mm-hmm.
which today I love. Actually, because I'm a movie guy, so I love behind the scenes stuff and how things work, and I find wrestling fascinating. So to hear stories of how things work in the wrestling business is fascinating to me. But back then it was not as visible as it is today.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was still had that mystique to it. I think more towards the Monday Night Wars. I mean, everybody knew that by that time, everybody, of course, knew that it was scripted and that they knew who was going to win beforehand. Back in the 80s, people still had their, still learning about it. And even before then, no one even knew what kayfabe was
Yeah,
until Vince went in front of the Jersey, I think it was the Jersey athletic board, and told them it was all entertainment, to avoid having to pay that promoter tax in New Jersey, which also helped them avoid paying taxes throughout the whole country for promoting events, like a boxing event or any kind of fighting event. He pretty much came out and said the whole thing was put on, the whole thing was predetermined. And that changed the game, but I think he made more money because of it.
yeah. And since we're talking about like the Attitude Era and the Monday Nitro and all that, and we didn't really have the internet, so there wasn't really digging into to see how about storylines. So do you remember how you figured out who was going to win a match and stuff? Because I remember like in the 80s and into the early 90s that usually like if it was a championship match and if the champion came out first, the champion was going to lose.
I heard that a lot. I think a lot of people brought that up. I never really looked into that much, but I remember people talking about that the champion came out first. But I don't think that was always. Did the champion always lose every time they came out first?
Uh, every time like I watched, I mean, I might have to go back and watch some of the older matches, but I did see a pattern there,
Right.
and I was like, huh.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't trying to think of the Attitude Era. If I don't think I was that like into like as far as like I could really figure out who was going to win what. I knew pretty much Austin was going, he was starting to rise up a lot. So I knew he was going to, but now, I mean, now it's so blatant obvious with all the script writers they have. It's very obvious who's going to win what match. To me back then, I never really well, how do you say? I never really like could get. I always guessed wrong most of the time when I thought who was going to win a match. And I remember a couple of times me and a couple of buddies would actually bet on matches, betting on pro wrestling, and of course half the time I'd come up wrong.
Yeah, like this past weekend at the Elimination Chamber, it was originally just going to be Matt Riddle and Bobby Lashley for the
Right.
U.S. Championship. And then they decided that it was going to turn into a triple threat, and John Morrison was thrown into the match.
Yep.
I was like, oh, So they're going to make Lashley still look strong by having Riddle pin Morrison.
Which was awesome. I think that was the most brilliant thing they could have done. I had a feeling Miz was going to walk out with the title. Hennessy loves Lashley, and looks like Hennessy wants to join in on the show as well. So let's welcome to the show my buddy from the Country and Henny Show, Mr. Hennessy Williams.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Oh man, just flexing.
Oh Jesus!
Oh, look at those guns.
Do you smell what the Rock is cooking?
No, but I smell my fiance's cooking. It has nothing. She's getting ready to cook.
Oh man, hey, 2021, man. That's not the way that it works anymore.
Oh no, I'm the cook in the house, but I've been working all day.
You get your ass up.
How you doing?
I'm good, man. I had to go to work real quick. Can you see? Okay, no, you're good. You can see me.
So we've been talking about the Monday Night War, but talking about wrestling in general. What are your thoughts about the Monday Night War? What are your thoughts about the whole Hogan turn, the Austin 316 era? What was your favorite?
Well, what's funny is, let me just go ahead and do a little history on my love for wrestling. So I really loved it between like 90 and 94. And then when Undertaker got put in the casket by Yokozuna, I was done with it because I thought that really happened. Like, I actually could really like the Undertaker at that point. And I remember getting WWF magazine. They're like, "Where's the Undertaker?" He'd like at a beach or like whatever. And then I didn't watch
what?
it.
They had WWF magazine? You're starting to show your age there.
I remember that, the Raw magazine, everything.
Anyway, so like I'm in middle school at this point, and like people are for real wearing like NWO gear and stuff to school. And I thought it was like a gang. Like I thought it was something for real. So
really, you had no idea that all that was happening?
I had no idea. I had seen him at Walmart. It's the funniest thing, yeah. Because I'm like, people didn't used to. I'm telling my mom because my dad hates wrestling. Like my dad hates it. Like he hates it. So I'm telling my mom, like, yeah, people like wrestling now. Like it's in the stories. And I watched NWO. I was hooked. Like when I seen Razor Ramon as Sky Hard, because Razor Ramon was my guy. And at that point, you know, we still had that magic that we always talk about with wrestling, which is like you knew it was fake, but was it real? You know, like you didn't. The storylines were just, you know, you said earlier, it was the beginning of the internet.
Well, when you saw Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, I mean, you weren't watching at that time, but had you been watching and saw how and you're watching live,
right,
and how that's taking place, like Brian said earlier, you thought that was real because you're seeing these two guys who you just seen on WWF TV a couple weeks ago. This did not happen that quick. Main guys switching that quick. Hogan took almost a year off before he went to WCW.
Right.
And
he was making Thunders in Paradise. And, like, you know,
and they had a big parade when he came over. You knew he was going to be part of that. When these two guys came over through the crowd in their street clothes, he thought it was on like Donkey Kong. He thought WWF was really invading. And that was.
And the main thing was WCW wasn't whack, but it was like the only people who watched it were people who really like, I like wrestling. Like, I like wrestling. Like, I don't like the show of it. I like wrestling. And then it became like NWO, and then that whole storyline with Sting until the actual match.
Oh yeah. And then the match was
which is the worst match. To me, it's the worst match of all time just because it sucks so bad for the build-up.
You had the build-up of a lifetime.
It's the best build-up of all time.
Sting didn't say shit. Didn't say shit for an entire year. Wins the title from Hogan at Starrcade after all that bullshit happened. And the first thing he says is Mamacita. Like, what the? You don't say shit all year, and your first thing you say after a year is Mamacita. I'm like, where the hell that shit come from?
I got the plastic. Okay, the paper bag is over it, so you don't know what this is.
Your White Claw.
Oh man. Well, we're keeping it 90s, so this is what they had after a nice, good quality match on Raw.
All right, Friday.
Hey, you should call him Booker. He looks like Booker T.
Can you dig it, sucker?
Oh yeah, I do got the Booker T now. You're right.
Well, that's old school Booker T. That's when I'm just coming over from in the invasion to the WWF Booker T. Now he's got him all the way down to here. So,
what's funny is GI Bro. That's the thing. If you want to go 90s Monday Night Wars, you can just think about how WCW effed it up, like from the late 1999.
Well, kicking Bischoff to the curb and bringing in Vince Russo wasn't the brightest.
Yeah, I love Vince Russo, though. I'm a Vince Russo guy. I don't give a shit.
You like Judy Bagwell on a pole? Come on,
I don't care. Well, hey. What else you got for me, dog? Like Hulk Hogan not even trying to give up the belt. You got old ass Kevin Nash, toy quad here, toy quad there. You got Scott Hall drinking himself to death. All these dudes are main event though.
Dude, when they brought over Bret Hart,
you want to know why Vince Russo didn't work there? Because he didn't have the talent. Like they didn't know how to use the talent there.
And he also didn't have Vince McMahon telling him no. I mean, that's one thing. Jim Cornette, who hates Vince Russo, he said numerous times. He said Vince would come up with some crazy. He had some good ideas, but a lot of his crazy ass shit, Vince McMahon's like, no. WCW, there was nobody to say no to him, which is why you saw stupid shit like Judy Bagwell on a pole.
Well, yeah, you had little cliques. You had little cliques of people like high school.
That New Blood shit they tried was it New Blood against the old guys? They could have. They fumbled that. That could have been a whole lot better than what
it could have been good. Yeah.
It was a good idea in theory. The execution was just terrible.
No, I don't defame or I don't talk bad of Buff Bagwell because he was my trainer. He was my trainer when I initially started learning how to wrestle.
Brian was talking about Buff earlier. That's one of his.
You know who was good was Canyon. That was somebody that they slept on. The dude was talent. Yeah.
What was his feud with Vampira? Was it with Vampira, man?
It was Glacier back when he was Mortis. That's how he got introduced.
Yeah, and that was bad.
Who's better than Canyon?
Nobody.
Who
was it? Who was it that was Mortis's partner? It was
Wrath.
Crush.
It was Brian Adams' Wrath.
Yeah, Brian Adams.
Who was also Adam Bomb.
Yeah, Adam Bomb. That's right.
Yeah, when they were Chronic, I remember
that was my favorite tag teams. They were the two most untalented people in the ring. I don't know why I loved them as a tag team.
Yeah, I met them at my mom's gym.
I wonder if they were really in the back smoking some Chronic. That's why they got the name Chronic.
Well, if you ever watch a Brian Adams promo, you know he's effing high when he gave it. If you ever watch any Brian Adams promos, it's like he took a list of all the worst shit to say in a promo.
Okay, no, so I was wrong. Brian Adams was Crush. Brian Clark was Adam Bomb.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I'm thinking of the damn sorry ass singer. Brian Adams sang Summer of '69, didn't he?
Hey, you better watch out, man. If you got some fucking women watching,
we talking about wrestling and Brian Adams.
They'll be taking this offense to that.
They're gonna come find me if I diss wrestling and Brian Adams.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with Brian Adams. He's a great Canadian singer.
That is true.
Oh, Canada. Speaking of Canadians, man, one of my favorites growing up was Bret Hart. And in my opinion,
I love him to death.
Dude, when he got signed by WCW, they should have brought him in immediately. They missed a golden opportunity.
If you watch,
they brought him over. He didn't do anything, right? Because he was injured.
Well, he wasn't injured the whole. It was just I think they just didn't know what to do with him.
When they brought him in, they had all right. So like, I was actually just watching all the Nitros on the network. And I really wanted to see like how they messed that up. Like it looked when he initially was feuding with Kurt Hennig, and they had a couple good matches. Like it was looking good, and then Hennig got hurt, and then they like wanted to put Bret Hart in NWO, but like they just didn't do it.
They could. I mean, yeah, because that's when they were over polluting the NWO with everybody and their mama. And by that
Bret
point,
Hart,
you're
we know for a fact, doesn't like Hogan.
Exactly.
He was NWO, and like he was doing all this not Bret Hart type shit. You know,
dude, that one time he was wearing a Hogan T-shirt. I'm sitting there thinking,
Right.
"Golly, they're paying you a lot of money to do that garbage."
Wasn't his first Sting as a ref during the Sting match?
Yeah, that's where.
Was it Sting versus Macho Man?
No, it was Sting versus Hogan at Starrcade, and Brett, who ref the match earlier in the night between Bischoff and I think Larry Zbyszko. And then what was supposed to happen was Nick Patrick was supposed to do a fast count. Hart come out, and because what happened in Montreal, say, I'm not letting another referee screw over somebody, order a restart. Hogan gets slapped into the Scorpion and taps out. Well, Nick Patrick didn't count a fast count, and they pretty much, it was regular count. Brett came out anyway, stopping them from ringing the bell. And it was just, they should have let Sting win cleanly. I wonder if Hogan was just politicking in the back, and because Hogan would always pitch a fit anytime he had to lay down or take a fall for anybody, a legit fall. So
yeah, that was bad. Like
it was terrible.
I don't see why you have like I don't see why you don't in that match clean 1, 2, 3, then get the W.
Yep.
Bret Hart. Hold them up, put them on their damn shoulders. If you want them to lose,
well, Brett shouldn't even been
let
out
them lose the next pay-per-view. You know what I'm saying? But don't. It was so whack. Like I hate thinking about it because it made me like we paid so much money for that stupid ass pay-per-view, yeah.
Yeah, I was living in Las Vegas during this time, so like I was always going to Halloween Havoc because it was at MGM Grand like every year. So like I saw the Hogan Warrior match. I saw what was it, DDP versus Goldberg?
Okay.
That one ended. I remember watching that one, and it ended on TV. We didn't know who won, even though we knew who won.
Oh, because they went over and the pay-per-view cut them off.
Like, how does a Goldberg match go over? Like, the only way it goes over is if you take 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was him and DDP, right, Brian?
Yeah.
Which was a hell of a match, but yeah.
And I remember the ticket prices were cheap during this time. Like the Halloween Havoc, the like ringside tickets were like $50.
Oh my god, that's cheap.
WCW Thunder was free. It was free, dog. And like my dad still wouldn't take me. Like he hates wrestling so much. I would beg him, like, yo, like it's free. It's at the Richmond Coliseum. It's free. And
I had one ringside seat for a Raw in Vegas at the Thomas and Mack Center. And I think those tickets at that time was like $75, which now if you want ringside, well, when we were going, ringside tickets for Raw was like over $100.
That's on a good day.
I wonder how much they're going to be at WrestleMania because they're allowing fans at Raymond James this year. They're doing it still 2 nights.
Yeah, but the thing is, they haven't announced anything, and we're just about a month away. So
right, I don't think like the way that WWE has been doing like their tickets and stuff. They've been making it this whole like you need to know, like you got to log on to this and be here at this time, and like it's hard as hell to even get tickets to any of their crap. Like NXT is impossible to get tickets to. Like impossible.
Yeah.
I've been to a couple NXT stuff, and I mean they're if it's not Takeover, their tickets are cheap. Ringside for their main NXT program is $20, and ringside seats for like their touring is like $10.
If you see them, if you get them.
Yeah, now of course now. But yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious. How many's going to be available for WrestleMania, and I'm sure they're going to probably skyrocket the price. The first event fans can actually come to and enter WrestleMania since last year. I'm sure they're going to raise the prices on that.
Well, they're not. I don't think they're having WrestleMania access. They might be, but they're having like WrestleCon and all that crap. I know they are.
But you're down in Florida, man. You know, it's Wild Wild West. Well, the Wild Wild East down there right now.
Hey, look, it makes me sound like I'm wearing a red hat when
He's like, we down here partying. I don't give a shit.
If it was my kid done went to school, gave a high five probably to everybody in the effing school and their mama, and I'm still here. So
yeah, and I live down here in Florida too. I actually don't live too far from Hennessy, so
if y'all worried about starting schools elsewhere, just know. I mean, I'm sitting here, you know what I'm saying, and my wife's a teacher. Brian's wife too.
Yeah.
So we're still here. I know I sound like I'm wearing a red hat, but whatever.
You know you got one in your closet.
Yeah, it says Tampa Bay Bucks, but that's that.
He's got one. He's like, in case any of these people try to raid my house, I got one just in case. Let me throw it on. I'm one of you.
I thought the hat says "I love gingers."
It probably said that too.
This is you're in Titletown now, boy. What? Tampa Bay Bucks? What?
Oh my
Tampa
God.
Bay Lightning? What? Tampa Bay Rays? Y'all lost, but what? Miami Heat? Y'all lost, but what? That's another. Orlando Magic? One day. One day.
In the multiverse.
So
that's definitely a different show.
So that little spring break we had that was a quarantine. You know, that was a nice time for us to get some football on.
So we've talked quite a bit about the Monday Night War. Back to wrestling. Let's bring it current just a little bit. What'd you guys think about the Elimination Chamber, the event?
I thought it was a great card. I enjoyed I thought it was one of the better ones. But I mean, I liked the match itself. I wanted a little bit more spots, but overall, I thought it was a great pay-per-view.
And like you were talking about earlier, you're talking about how they put John Morrison into the U.S. title match to create a triple threat as a way to get rid of the belt without having to beat at Lashley and keep Lashley looking strong. Whoa, and then he came out later, put the work on Drew McIntyre, setting up the Miz to cash in. I knew once Lashley came out there, I was like, oh shit. And he started beating the crap out of Drew. I was like, here comes the Miz. He's about to cash in. And sure enough, boom, here's the Miz, and now he's the WWE champion again.
Bobby
Lashley. Do you think that the rumor is true? Because I've been hearing a lot of people saying that at SummerSlam we may see Brock Lesnar and Lashley.
That would be. I mean, who's going to be the face? Who's going to be the heel? I mean, to my opinion, they both do their best work as badass heels. I mean, who knows? I think what's going to happen is I think either Lashley's going to outright beat the Miz next Monday night and win the title, or Morrison will interfere. Miz will keep it by DQ, and then somehow it's a triple threat at Mania between him, McIntyre.
Fastlane.
Yeah, Fastlane. I forget that's first. So either Lashley's going to win it outright, or it's going to move into a triple threat at Fastlane, or they may hold off to Mania.
WrestleMania or SummerSlam.
No, we're talking about Fastlane and WrestleMania. We're talking about what might happen here the next month or two.
Yeah, Miz won't be champion at WrestleMania. I think he's a transitional champion.
Yeah, because I still think they're going to try to have him and Morrison against Damian Priest and Bad Bunny.
Why?
Because WWE needs sales, man. Bad Bunny is their highest merch seller right now.
And Priest is good. I don't know why they have him in this story. I love Priest. I've always loved him since Ring of Honor and New Japan.
I can't stand Damian Priest's name. I hate that name. I hate that name. And what is he called? The Archer of Infamy? Fuck out of here.
Wasn't that that's at AEW, isn't it? The Archer.
No, they said that when he came out during Royal Rumble.
Oh,
Maybe they messed up. I hope they did, because I never want to hear it again.
Yeah, when he came over the first time, he had his actual name, which was Punishment Martinez, but then they changed it.
I don't like that name either.
well,
That
Ryan chimes in. He wants to know what's your guy's favorite '90s superstar. Why WCW and WWF? I'm gonna go with Brian first.
Oh man! All right,
that
favorite.
name sucks so bad. You know what? I like Damian Priest now.
Okay, we're off of that subject, Henny.
Favorite 90s.
That's the worst name I've ever heard. Punishment Martinez. Yeah.
Favorite 90s WCW superstar. I'm gonna go with Diamond Dallas Page.
Okay. DDP. What about WWF?
Oh man, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
All right. Hennessy, what about you? Who's your favorite WCW and WWF?
I mean, honestly, we've already went over this because he was my black person of the week. Norman Smiley, boy!
Oh my God.
Norman Smiley to death all the time.
He would always.
There it is.
And he loves the big wiggle.
Chris Jericho actually is my favorite wrestler of all time. So I got to see a lot of him in WCW. And then when he went to WWF,
and now
I got to see even more of him there. So I was good.
For me, I'm going to have to say WCW, definitely Sting. WWF, probably Bret Hart. Later on, became Stone Cold. Definitely after 98, it was definitely more Steve Austin. But most of the 90s, it was Sting and Bret. So when they finally met up in WCW and had matches, man, I was in nerd heaven. I was sitting there, I was like, hell yeah, finally, you know. Or when Bret Hart would go against Chris Benoit, and those matches were amazing.
My favorite thing about Stone Cold, like, people don't understand, like, it's so hard to explain. Like, The Rock big now, but he was big then, but as a wrestler, you know. And Stone Cold, everybody knew Stone Cold. It didn't matter if you liked wrestling or not. It didn't matter nothing. And I just remember, like, my cousin, like, in the hood of Philadelphia, like, loving Stone Cold. Yeah. Like, that's when I knew. I'm like, all right, WWF for real is like transcendent right now.
Yeah, because you had someone coming out shooting off the middle finger, stunning the boss. I mean, drinking beer, fucking hell yeah. You know, that attitude era.
He was good, man. And
everybody had his shirt on. It was a black shirt with white letters, basic as hell.
Right.
Austin 316 says, I just whipped your ass, you know.
Oh, we have to get through. Go ahead, Brian.
I got a question for both of you. I asked this on my show when we did the Attitude episode last year. If you could take any superstar from today, from either NXT or Raw, SmackDown, and put them in the Attitude Era, who would it be and why?
Henny, I'm gonna let you go with that first.
Let me. I know who I want to say, but I really don't like him as much as other people do. And I can't even remember his AEW name now, but Dean Ambrose would have been real nice as a kind of tweener mid-card, maybe win the title every now and again, late 90s. Like, I mean, I could see him going against Al Snow, Steve Blackman, X-Pac, you know, right in that little category, and even sneak up and maybe fight Kurt Angle or whatnot every now and again. So I'm going Dean Ambrose. Or what is his name in AEW?
John Moxley.
Yeah. Which is better?
I mean, that was his independent name before he got WWF or WWE. Was John Moxley. Now it's more. I've been listening to Jim Cornette a little bit too much, so now it's more of a Stone Cold cosplay. Is what he calls John Moxley. He calls him Stone Cold Moxley. It's pretty hilarious. Who would I take from the current and put him in the Attitude Era? Oh man. Trying to think, like from WWE, from over there, probably Charlotte Flair, because
Okay.
I think
Good.
I think the women's wrestling has evolved so much that I think she could have really helped kick it off even more. Take the current Charlotte Flair and put her in the Attitude Era. I think could have really kicked off that women's era. If I was at to pick
the matches that she would have with with Victoria and Trish Stratus and Lita and Jazz.
what about
God.
Medusa? What about Alundra
And she's a
Blaze?
Flair,
Imagine
and
her
she's
and Charlotte.
a Flair, boy. She's a Flair in the prime of Flair.
Mm-hmm. AEW, man, I'm not a huge fan of AEW. Who would I put over there?
I've never seen one episode of AEW.
I've been to an event and I've watched a few episodes. They're not really utilizing their talent well enough to keep my interest. But if I had to pick anybody from now and put them back then, it would probably either be Moxley, or I mean, hell, they already have one over there, Jericho. Jericho was in the Attitude Era. I mean, of course they brought in Sting. They've got
a little bit of the bubbly, a little bit of the bubbly.
Well, they've got old man Jericho. They've got Potbelly Jericho.
My answer has not changed, and as soon as I say this name, you can just picture the matches. AJ Styles.
Oh yeah,
I thought about him, but he was there.
Imagine AJ.
No. Currently, the way that they are right now, take him and implant him into the Attitude Era. The matches he would have with Shawn Michaels and
that's the first one I think of is the Shawn Michaels matchup.
Has to be currently too, because like AJ Styles needed that. He needed to not be in, like when he came to WWE, that was the perfect time when he came. Because he was coming off of NJPW. Like, he couldn't cut promos for shit in TNA for a long time.
It took him a while. I mean, he grew up in TNA. When he was in WCW, he was barely into the scene. And that was in late.
And when he left, and when he left, just that little bit of time that he left before he came to WWE.
Went to New Japan.
It was like he went and took like steroids. I don't know what the fuck he did, He learned how to get on the mic. Maybe I need to take a trip over to Japan, and get whatever he had in that couple months.
When he finally made the jump to WWF, I wasn't watching at the time. I had steered away from the product, and then someone said, "Yo, AJ." I remember someone saying AJ Styles in WWF, and immediately I went and watched that Rumble.
Good pick, Ryan.
Huh?
I was saying good pick, Ryan. My bad.
Oh yeah. Ryan picked, bring it back up. He picked Kevin Nash and The Rock.
Yeah.
And so when AJ came over, I wasn't really watching because even when the whole Sting thing happened, I wasn't really watching. And I remember hanging out with some friends. We had just gotten off work at the bar we worked at. And one of my buddies was watching it on his phone, the WrestleMania replay. And I'm like, is that Sting? Is that Sting in the WWE? And I had no idea because I had steered away from the product, and I had to go back and watch everything from the Survivor Series on, because that's when he appeared, was in Survivor Series. The last WCW guy that had never appeared in WWF or WWE was Sting. He had always been in TNA, and wasted too many years down there. And then he finally came over, so I had to go back. I watched everything from that Survivor Series on to see, what all he did. I was still pissed that Triple H beat him, but it is what it is.
I still crave a Sting Taker match, man. That was the match that everybody wanted.
It's not going to happen, but
do it on WWE 2K20, whatever they make, if they ever make it again. That time has passed, bro, and that is what's sad. That's the sad thing about the wars. If y'all never had no damn war, it could have, just think about the matches you could have had if you had a good relationship like they had in this, even though they didn't have the best relationship, but if they had territories like the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, where you're like, hey, Sting, come wrestle Bret Hart, and we'll do it live on pay-per-view. That would have been like a super seller, bro.
Well, they did
Yeah.
wrestle in WCW.
Well,
Yeah,
right, but that don't count.
you know why Sting couldn't come over right away, and along with a few of the others, is because they were still under contract with AOL.
Oh yeah, they got all that money to stay at home.
He was making money, right? Like I ain't mad at him.
I wouldn't turn that shit down either.
He should have went like earlier in the 90s. Like what's funny is early 90s Sting in WCW with the face paint and the flat top would have been better in WWF.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean WCW took Sting, WWF took Warrior. Clearly WCW had the better prospect. One of the main reasons why Sting never went.
I'll be back because I have a prop I want to show you, country. But continue.
Okay. One of the reasons why Sting never went over to WWF until very late in his career was because he had always heard how Vince ruins talent. He saw what happened when Booker went over, how they misused Booker for a good minute, man, until they made him King Booker. Finally started putting a belt on him.
Yeah, they never used him right. Like he never won the WWF title. He won the WCW title. Like
well, he won the world title too. I mean, the Raw world title afterwards when he was King Booker.
Well, yeah, King Booker.
King Booker.
So before that, I was gonna say Booker T and Steve Austin in the supermarket. That was gold.
That's not really attitude era, though. I would say that
that's at the end of it.
That's like it's that attitude. I mean, I guess it kind of is that little in between era of what did The Rock call it? Like The Rock called it.
Nice. Look at that. Smoking Skull Championship. Yeah. Is it signed by Steve?
No, not yet. But
is that Hacksaw? It's Hacksaw.
There's like tons of signatures on here. On this side too.
Nice.
Both Hardys. I mean, like I even have like some AEW guys on here, like Kenny Omega and the Bucks. I mean, I have lots of people that signed this belt.
Have you been to a Starcast yet or no?
I have not.
They come back. I want to go to one. I went when AEW came to Nashville. I think they've only been once to Nashville, but when they came, I went to the event and cheap tickets, and it was all right. It was an okay event. And then afterwards, Conrad Thompson and Jim Ross and I'm trying to think who else was there. They all had a little live podcast show at Zany's, which was freaking amazing at the Comedy Club. So yeah, if they do Starcast again, man, I'm gonna spend the money. I'm gonna go check it out.
I just thought of another name.
Do a live show from there.
If we took 2010 or 2011 CM Punk and put him in Attitude Era, that would have been awesome.
Oh yeah, CM Punk was definitely after. I mean, you hear a lot about before their time. He could have killed it in the Attitude Era.
Yeah, like there would have never been a war. I think it would have been it. WCW would have been.
Y'all can go ahead and go to the cons and everything and get the signature. I'm gonna go to Public on East Colonial. I'm gonna kick it right there with my belt and just wait for them all to walk in because they ain't going nowhere, no ways.
I used to go to that Public all the time.
They go to the Walmart. If you live in Atlanta, if you want to see professional wrestlers, they go to the Walmart at East Colonial and the Publix. That's where they be at. Like that's where they're at.
All the NXT guys, that's where they go?
That's where they go. That's where they go. That's what I've heard.
I saw
and he put them all out there, ain't he?
So on Twitter, when Kyle O'Reilly talked about the Canadian chips and he took a picture inside the Publix, that's the Publix over there?
Oh, they're there, y'all. Just stand outside with your belt. Do a little Salvation Army jingle.
Wow.
Okay.
And they'll hook it up for you.
I see Country's writing this down. He's like, next time I'm in the area.
I used to see Ember Moon,
East Colonial.
Ember Moon and what is Zack Ryder's name in AEW?
I think it goes by his real name, Matt Cardona.
Is he still in AEW?
I don't know. No, I think he only made a couple shots. Yeah, he's on Impact. Yeah, that's another thing. Like AEW, like it happens a lot. So
they're working with everybody though. AEW is working with Impact and they're working with New Japan.
Yeah, but like
and
what I'm
NWA. They're working with NWA as well.
really?
Yeah.
But like what I'm getting to is like when they brought out Zack Ryder and they're like, oh my God, it's Matt Cardona. And I'm like, who the fuck knows this guy's Matt Cardona? They know him as Zack Ryder. They have no idea who's Matt Cardona. Like when they brought out Kenta, when Kenta he attacked John Moxley, took the mask off. They're like, it's Kenta. And I'm like, yeah, if you watch Japanese wrestling, you know who Kenta is. Most of the people over here who are not diehards, who is the casual fan that they should be trying to get, they're going to have their diehard fans. They should be trying to get casual fans too. They have no idea who the hell Kenta is. They're like, who the hell is this guy? You know, I knew who Kenta was because I've seen a couple of his matches over in New Japan. I saw some stuff John Moxley's been doing over there. But I wasn't like, oh my God.
He only kicking it because he was the first one. You know what I'm saying? Like he was the
Well,
first.
he lives in Orlando too. So he lives in Florida, right near Orlando. So he was able to just drive on over and be a part of the show.
What's his name? Pac? What was his name in WWE? Pac.
Oh, crap.
I can't even remember what he went by.
I know who you're talking about.
Neville,
yes.
Right. Like,
dude, when he turned heel in WWE, I was like, hell yeah.
And he's been that way ever since.
He's better as a heel. He wrestles like a heel. He's got the evil, ugly face, little dwarf troll looking face.
Well,
and like mean mugging everybody.
What do they call him? Something bastard or whatever, and like that's even part of his merchandise.
The bastard Pac. That's what they call him. They were watching Game of Thrones a little bit too much.
I saw his toy at Walmart and I was like, oh my God, I've never seen an AEW toy at Walmart. Like they never have them. Like they never have them.
My Walmart only has the belt and the ring. I never see the guys.
I almost bought it because I was like, I might be able to sell this for a good chunk of change. It was Pac. And then I was like, fuck it, whatever. He's not that good. If it had been like Hoyt Ambrose, Dean Ambrose, what the hell is that? Moxley, yes. I would have maybe got it. I can't get with that John Moxley.
Did you guys ever buy the action figures and like even if they were on WCW and like just have matches and stuff?
Dude, I had the ring. I had everything. My mom got pissed off at me one time. I can't remember what I did. She tells the story better than I do. But I had everything. I had like the fake styrofoam belts. But I had all the little action figures. I had the rings, had the cage, had everything. I'll never forget. I pissed her off. Something I did because I was a little evil, little redheaded child any damn way. Dude, she took all that shit and threw it in the freaking dumpster. No lie. Wow. I had boxes worth of shit and she threw it all in the dumpster. So yeah, I was a huge collector. Back in the day, I didn't collect anymore after that, but
like I would have my WCW guys and they would fight the WWF guys. I would have invasion angles and everything. I even there was a
booked it better than the actual invasion.
They were called Ringside Collectibles, and they sold like the action figure belts. And so, like, I would buy the belts, and they would mail them to me, and I would use the belts. Like, I would have like like Ultimate Warrior fight like Sting, and like Bret Hart fight Goldberg, and it was really cool. I had my own stories and champions and everything.
I just play the games. Like I had WWF Royal Rumble for Sega Genesis, and like I played. Like I remember I got blistered on my fingers from playing that game so hard.
And they finally started bringing the Rumble into the video games. Man, that was awesome. I mean,
oh hell yeah! And then we had WWF Warzone. Then we had Attitude. Then we had WCW Revenge. Which I mean, Revenge is like still the greatest wrestling game ever to me. I don't care what anybody says. Or No Mercy. WWF No Mercy. But like the video games were better. All those video games were better than every one they have now. Like the WWE 2K sucks compared to No Mercy, Revenge, and WrestleMania video games. So the video games,
the SmackDown series was good.
Yeah, the Raw versus SmackDown.
Yeah,
it was. Here Comes the Pain was a good one.
Yeah.
A couple of the 2K games are good. Like 2K19 I thought was okay. And then like I think it was 12 or 13, but then like a lot of them were hit and miss.
One of
It's
the
not
most
bad.
one of the most underrated games, in my opinion, was the WCW NWO N64 game.
The World Tour.
That was a
That was
really
the
good game.
predecessor to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I learned that WCW had this whole new roster. I'm like, yo, they had 6-pack up in here? Like, what? I'm like, 1, 2, 3 kids and fucking WCW now?
You guys remember the ECW video game? There was a couple of them.
I
think I might have seen one.
They all suck so bad. Like, what was the one? I wanted it to be good too. Like, I still bought it. They made one
on
like
PlayStation, the first PlayStation.
They made one like WWF Attitude.
Was it Anarchy Rules? I know that was a pay-per-view name, but
that was one of them. Yeah,
I thought they had named a video game like that too.
Man, ECW
was awesome for its time. I mean, it's often overlooked because it was definitely the smaller of the three. But I mean, one of the things that propelled WWE into the above WCW was their involvement of ECW, bringing in the ECW guys. Did a small invasion with that, which did a lot of
and like, we never even knew that, and we had no idea about that then.
Like, they tried it with the NWA, and that was like, nobody gives a shit. Nobody cared about the NWA. They didn't care about the North American Championship or Jeff Jarrett and all that. Now, when they brought in the ECW guys and had them, when they had the ECW guys coming through the crowd, and when they had Paul Heyman bringing them in, they were kicking on all cylinders with that one.
Well, honestly, the Dudley Boys are the ones. Like, they were the ones who really made the trend. Like, when you look at the tag team scene, needed them in WWF.
Oh yeah, I mean, they're arguably probably the best tag team of all time.
I mean, they're definitely up there.
Well, guys, that's probably going to be the end of the show tonight. We're going on an hour and a half. We could probably talk all night about the Monday Night Wars and wrestling in general, which we probably should do. I mean, hell, especially with WrestleMania coming up, hopefully, get some WrestleMania shows on here. But before we go, I'm gonna let Brian, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you, man, and tell them about Reels and Heels in a little bit.
Yeah, well, Reels and Heels every Saturday at 2:15 Eastern on the HWWS Web TV YouTube channel and our Facebook page, as well as their Facebook page. We talk about movies and television, pro wrestling. We've been talking about comic books. This Saturday is our magical theme episode, so everything is magical, not necessarily fantasy or like supernatural based. So films like Now You See Me, The Prestige, Illusionist. Nice. So we have a magician joining us, Eric Olson. So he's going to do some tricks while we're talking about this stuff. Boy. Yeah, this is going to be fun.
Black people love magic. Nobody loves magic like a black person, boy.
Henny will be right there front and center. I'll be working. I'll have to catch the replay. I'll be working, but Henny going to be right there.
Magicians really, I mean, this is how much time we got? Magicians really, just get a whole room of black people. You'll never, ever, ever have a silent crowd, ever.
Well, Henny, they know they can find you on our Country and Henny show. Are we going to do that live tomorrow, or are we going to record it again?
We can do that live, and then you can check me out on the Hennessy Williams Experience, and then I got my own game show coming out very soon. Pump Fakes and Hot Takes. I'm sorry, Hot Fakes and Pump Takes. I'm messing up my own name here. So we'll be bringing on various comedians from all over the country. We're going to have a 10-minute game show. It's going to be some wild shit, so just be ready for that.
Hell yeah. And everybody, you can find us right here, the Ginger Chronicles, every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here. Hopefully next week, Death Kids may be right back to join me. Also, don't forget tomorrow night. Are we going to do it live, Henny, tomorrow night?
I guess that's what we're doing. Live it is.
What time are we doing it?
About
9 Eastern?
I mean, hey. You ain't got no kids, man. Like, you know what? I hate talking to people who don't have kids.
Well, hey, I'm down to do. Hey, I'm down to do live on this show.
They don't understand. It takes 15 minutes just to put them in the car. Whatever you ask me to do, add 15 minutes to it.
So hopefully you might see us live tomorrow night. I guess this is going to be a surprise kind of thing, or we got to wait and see what Henny can do. If not, we'll see the Country and Henny show tomorrow night live. We'll see.
It's going to be like that meme where I think it's
Surprise,
the guy from Dexter, where he says, "Surprise, motherfuckers!"
You got to say, "Mother Scooter."
That's gonna be our intro tomorrow night. Surprise, motherfucker!
oh yeah! Black Person of the Week. Woo, boy! I can't wait for tomorrow.
So you get your Black Person of the Week, which is one, and we also got the Mighty Ducks. We do our throwback.
The throwback, boy.
Which is this week. Last week it was on Coming to America, the first one, and this week was on Mighty Ducks. So we still got to do the Mighty Ducks episode. So we might see us live. I don't know. Henny might change his mind. I'm always down to go live, but Henny might change his mind.
I just want people to watch it when we're live. If I'm gonna be live, I want to see the whole world watching me live, yeah.
They're watching you live right now. Well,
I want Donald Trump and Mar-a-Lago sending fake tweets that nobody sees about it.
You guys should do the Mighty Ducks thing after the show drops on Disney Plus.
Hold up, what?
You didn't know they got a new show coming out? Yeah, they're doing a show now.
About magic? What?
Well, guys,
appreciate Mighty Ducks television show.
Jesus. Yep. Appreciate you guys joining me tonight. We're gonna cut this episode off now. Appreciate everybody joining us tonight for the Ginger Chronicles. Like I said, every Wednesday night, 8 Eastern, right here. Tomorrow night, the Country and Henny show at 9 Eastern or 8 Eastern, depends on when it comes on. And this Saturday at 2:15 Eastern, check out Brian for the Reels and Hills. Until then, I will see you guys next Wednesday. Thank you again. Ginger Chronicles out.